everybody, Zach here from Primrose Productions Music. Today I have a really cool little video for you. I've decided I'm going to start a new series where basically the gist of it is I'm going to go on Craigslist and I'm going to find some audio equipment. This could be anything, like could be rack gear like preamps, EQs, and compressors, could be guitar pedals, could be amps, could be guitars themselves, and basically if it looks cool, if it looks like it might be fun to use, if it might be useful, and if it's reasonably priced, I'm gonna buy it and we're gonna try it out. So today is the first installment in that series. Today we are checking out the DBX 1066 compressor. Found this on Craigslist relatively cheap, and we're gonna see if it's any good. It's a bit of an older compressor, not crazy old. It's not like, I wouldn't call it vintage yet, but it's probably about 20 years old, maybe a little more than that. But we're gonna plug it in, we're gonna try it out on a few different sources, and we are gonna see how it sounds. So the first thing we're gonna do here, I have a song that's already recorded. It's pretty much been mixed, and I'm going to be swapping out compression on individual tracks or buses for this compressor here to see how it's gonna sound. So the first thing we're gonna test it out on is the kick and snare on this track. This particular compressor is a 2-channel compressor. It also has a gate built in. So we are gonna be using the gate on this first instance and probably not on the other ones. But for kick and snare, the gate is gonna be really useful. So we have the kick bus and the snare bus routed to either channel of the compressor, and we're going to see how it sounds. First I'm gonna play it for you with the compressor engaged, then I'm gonna play it for you with the compressor bypassed, so you can hear the difference that it's really making on the kick and snare. So as you can see on the kick and snare here, way tighter, way punchier when going through this compressor, and the use of the gate here really helps to take out a lot of the excess background noise going on in both the kick and the snare track. Now let's check out what it sounds like with the compressor on these two things in the mix. Again, we're gonna do it with the compressor on and then with the compressor bypass so you can hear the difference.
At the height of international violence, there's no sloth and indifferent silence. There's blood on the roots of the ones that we hate.
So in the full mix, going through this compressor, you can hear how the kick and the snare really cut through the mix a lot more when it's going through the compressor, and when it's not, the kick and snare are almost inaudible. They're getting really drowned out by everything else in the mix. So overall for kick and snare, pretty good. Now we're gonna check it out on the drum bus overall. So this is all of the drums, cymbals, everything routed to one bus, and on that one bus is where we're inserting this compressor, and we've engaged the stereo option on the compressor so that I can control both sides of the compressor at the same time with one set of controls, so there's not going to be any variation between the two sides, how the compressor is going to affect each side individually. So again, we're going to check it with the compressor engaged on the drum bus, and then we're going to check it with the compressor bypassed on the drum bus to hear the difference. So on the drum bus, it's sounding way tighter overall. It's also cutting out a lot of mud, which I thought was really interesting because it's not an EQ, it's just, I guess, whatever attack and release settings I had on this just happened to be working really well to cut out any excess noise. Now let's check that in the mix. Again, we're gonna check it in the mix with the compressor on first and then with the compressor bypassed.
At the height of international violence, there's no sloth and indifferent silence. There's blood on the roots of the ones that we hate, but they can only kill when we let them create.
So in the full mix, you can really hear how much mud is getting cut out of the track when it's going through this particular compressor. There's a very clear difference in the low-mid buildup when it's running through the compressor. Something really interesting that I found, again, it's something with my attack and release settings. It just works really well running through the actual hardware compressor compared to the compressor that I have in the box. The other thing that I noticed is it's taming things a lot better. It's really helping from the kick and the snare cutting through too much. They were almost overpowering without the compressor on, but turning it on, they still sound great in the mix, but they're not overpowering everything else like they were. Now we're gonna check this out on the bass bus. We could do this mono because all the bass tracks are mono and it's panned mono, but I have them running into a stereo bus, all the bass tracks, so we're just gonna put it on the bus and we're gonna leave the stereo link intact so that we can affect both sides equally with the exact same settings. So running through this compressor, the bass sounds way better. It's much tighter, it's cutting through better, there's much better articulation of the individual notes when it's running through the compressor. Let's check out what it does in the mix.
The soul system's falling apart. And there's no one around to brave enough to restart. So start.
In the mix, you can hear, again, like it did with the drum bus, it's cutting out a lot of the mud, a lot of the low-mid buildup in the bass when it's in the full mix. It's not too noticeable that it's doing that when it's just the bass on its own, but when you listen in the full mix, you can really hear a difference in the overall muddiness of the track. Also, that punchiness, that articulation of notes, the tightness that this compressor is giving the bass, especially in the breakdown, you can really hear the breakdown feels heavier because of what this compressor is doing to the bass. It's making it pulse in a way that just adds feeling and momentum to the whole breakdown section. Now, the last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna throw this compressor on the vocal bus. This is multiple scream vocal tracks routed to a single bus, some are panned left, some are panned right, so we're gonna stick with the stereo link on the compressor, and let's hear what that sounds like.
At the heart of international violence, there's our sloth, an indifferent silence. There's mood on the roads, of the ones that we hate, but they can only kill when we let them create.
So on the vocal bus, it's cutting out a little bit of mud, and it's also helping with the articulation of the vocals. Again, it's just like the attack of each word, the beginning of each word just seems to cut through a little bit better going through this compressor. Now let's check this one in the full mix.
At the heart of international violence, there's our sloth, an indifferent silence. There's food on the roads, of the ones that we hate, but they can only kill when we let them create.
So the biggest difference I'm hearing in the mix with this compressor is the vocals are cutting through a lot better than they were without it. And again, this is probably just that articulation of the words that I was hearing when we soloed it. It's just helping things to cut through everything a lot better. So overall, I really like this compressor. I think it's doing a lot of interesting things, and it's cleaning up a lot of stuff, and it's helping things get way punchier, and just adds feeling in a way that some of the plug-in compressors that I usually use just don't quite do it the same way. So for the price I got it at, it was like $100. I think this is a really good find for something that I got off of Craigslist. Like, you never know what the hell you're gonna get off of Craigslist, but in this case, I think it really worked out. So let me know what you guys thought. If you think that this is something you'd like to see more of, me finding cheap gear on Craigslist and reviewing it. I have a couple more that I'm gonna do in the very near future. But for now, I think this was a really cool first foray into this kind of a thing. So I'll probably look into getting some more stuff even on top of what I already have lined up. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, if you liked the compressor, let me know in the comments which instrument, which use of this compressor was your favorite one, what you think it sounded best on. Thank you guys so much. I will see you in the next video.